Today's show is sponsored by BMC, and BMC wants to know, is your business on its A game? The A game is when systems are intelligent by learning from markets, where automation is paramount yet effortless, and when technology and people work as one in an enterprise. The A game is your business at its absolute best. BMC calls this the autonomous digital enterprise. Find out more at bmc.com/agame. That's bmc.com/agame.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We are coming to you live from the massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Hope everybody is doing well. Hope everybody's staying safe and healthy. It is kind of cruising through the middle of February 2021. We are, continuing to move through the year. We're seeing some good progress on things like the vaccine beginning to roll out around the world. We're seeing less cases. So that's an encouraging sign for the year. So let's get right to Cloud News of the Week. Before we do that, I want to give a big thanks to everybody who's been telling a friend about Cloudcast Basics. Both Season 0 and Season 1 are out there. And just to kind of give you a sense of the uptake, I know a lot of you are telling a friend. We're getting some good feedback from people. It took us about a whole year. Actually, it took us the entire year when we first started the show back in 2011 to get to 10,000 listens. It has now taken us about a month, maybe 5 weeks or so to get to 10,000 listens with this new show. So big uptake. Really appreciate that from everybody who's been telling a friend and just spreading the word, helping us to grow the Cloudcast community for somewhere down the road when those folks listening are going to jump back in and become part of the bigger Cloudcast. So that, and also want to thank everybody for the big uptake on the Sunday Perspective show. We're starting to see some really nice uptake on the Sunday shows to go along with the Wednesday shows like we always have. So with that, I want to get right to Cloud News of the Week. There's a couple of interesting stories this week, a little bit of money changing hands and some things. So first and foremost, a longtime sponsor of the show, friend of the show, Datadog, acquired two companies, Screen, S-Q-R-E-E-N, Screen and Timber, to help them bolster both their application security and data management capabilities. So Datadog has been continuing to expand that platform from logging to APM capabilities to managing containers and Kubernetes and every sort of service that you have out there, getting into security, getting into more and more levels of app monetization. So congratulations to both Datadog as well as Screen and Timber. Second on this week's Cloud News of the Week is Kong, a company we've been following for a while. Does a lot of work in both API management, where they really kind of made a name for themselves, but also more so recently also in service mesh. Kong raised $100 million in their round D round of funding. So congratulations to the Kong team, continuing to see uptake. Obviously going to expand out sales and marketing, allows them to accelerate application, accelerate engineering development and all the other things that a lot of money can help you do. So congratulations to the Kong team. And then finally, we thought there was a sort of an interesting article. Obviously, we try and cover the SaaS space. We probably don't do as good a job as we could, but we're always looking to learn more about it, especially the sort of economics and financial dynamics behind SaaS, both running SaaS companies, starting SaaS companies, but also the dynamics for people that are consuming SaaS services. So there was a very interesting article called "Understanding the SaaS Magic Number," which really kind of looks at your annual recurring revenues or your quarter-over-quarter recurring revenues versus your sales and marketing numbers. And obviously, there are some very well-known models in the SaaS space as far as how fast how much you need to spend early on to be able to grow, to acquire customers, because SaaS is all about recurring revenues as opposed to just big deals back in the hardware and software days. So very good article, Understanding the SaaS Magic Number. We will get that in the show notes for Cloud News of the Week. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up for Cloud News of the Week for this week. We have a very interesting topic this week. Get a chance to talk to some folks from a company called Linear B to really talk about what it's like to do what we'll call asynchronous development. So what's it like to work with remote teams? What are some of the tools that are helping to make sure that not only they're working well across time zones, across different teams, making sure that you can kind of view the status of not only projects but also the status of the people behind it. Making sure people aren't getting burned out, and then ultimately, how do you take all that information that's at a very deep technical level and be able to bring that up to a business level and be able to have those types of dashboards so you can have business conversations with the leaders of your business. So really excited to get into this conversation. It's a very fun conversation. I think you'll enjoy it right after the break. Today's show is sponsored by Datadog, a cloud-scale monitoring platform that unifies metrics, logs, and traces from technologies like Istio, AppMesh, and Envoy. Plus, Datadog's Service Map automatically plots out the dependencies in your microservices architectures for seamless, context-rich troubleshooting. With rich visualizations, algorithmic alerting, and more than 250 vendor-supported integrations, Datadog allows you to monitor your distributed applications in real time. Start a free 14-day trial today by visiting datadog.com/cloudcast, and Datadog will send you a great free t-shirt. That's datadog.com/cloudcast. Today's show is sponsored by Onyx, the award-winning cloud solutions provider. As a premier Google Cloud partner and an advanced consulting partner for AWS, Onyx is the partner you need to take advantage of all the cloud has to offer. Always on, Onyx provides consulting services for cloud infrastructure, collaboration, devices, enterprise search, and geospatial technology. They build long-standing, authentic relationships with their clients. Onyx's cloud data experts are your trusted advisors for discovery and planning to data migration, storage, and visualization. Their team provides experienced machine learning consulting and ensures you are maximizing your data's value. See why 97% of their clients say they're satisfied with the work Onyx has done for them. For a limited time, Onyx is offering your organization a free 6-hour cloud data strategy workshop, normally valued at over $2,000. For more information on this special offer, visit onyxnet.com/thecloudcast. That's ONIXNET.com, onyxnet.com/thecloudcast. And we're back. And folks, as all of you know, if you've been paying attention at all of this last year, things have been a little different. We've all been, for the most part, working from home. We've been working away from our colleagues. We've been, working remotely. We've been trying to figure out how to be really productive, in a different world. And that's not totally unusual. Obviously, we've had remote teams in the past. We've had distributed teams in the past, but we've been kind of digging in, trying to figure out what are some of the things that people are learning about how to do this better. What are some of the things that, tools that can help you do that. And so we're really excited today to kind of dig into this topic and kind of this whole space of remote development and asynchronous development and all those things. So very excited to have Dan Lyons, who is Chief Operation Officer and co-founder of LinearB. Dan, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show today.
So we're going to dig into this, but before we get into that, give us a little bit of your background. Like what in your past sort of brought you to want to be, make application teams more productive, and ultimately what you guys are doing at LinearB.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first and foremost, I'm one of the co-founders at LinearB, and we are focused on development team productivity. We, kind of call it software delivery intelligence. But before I was a co-founder at LinearB, I've been in the development space for many, many years. And previously, I was actually a VP of engineering at a fast-growing kind of scale-up startup company. We ended up being acquired by Cisco Systems once my team got to about 85 developers. And I just really always had trouble at the executive table. If you look at what's kind of going on in that executive setting, whether you're a CTO or a VP of engineering, everyone else that's sitting at the table has a tool that shows visibility into sales or marketing visibility, productivity, or even HR. And for us as engineering leaders, we didn't have that tool and I didn't have that tool. So I just kind of thought, what? It's time that everyone that's in the engineering community, all of us leaders should have something that brings some of that visibility into their teams and productivity and how can I communicate about these things. And, that's where I got really inspired to found LinearB.
Yeah. And as I was kind of digging into, you guys came on my radar. I was reading an article you had written about, how you were dealing with kind of remote teams. And the more I dug into the tool, and we'll get into that more as we go along, it was like you said, it was not just another, here's our project tool. There's plenty of those out there, but it was, here's the project, here's the people that are involved, here's the dependencies. But then it really kind of dove into a lot of other interesting aspects. How do we measure whether somebody's just behind on their work or it's burnout? How do we put some of these things in, like you said, business terms and stuff? So, I thought the perspective was really, really cool. And I want to dive into it a little bit more. Before we get into that, give us a sense. I mean, you guys have now been not only working with teams for this last year, we've all been kind of doing stuff differently, but just how's a day-to-day developer's life changed now that, the last year we've all been remote, we've been, having to sometimes be VPN, but what's the mindset change that's happened over the last year that you've seen in talking to the market?
Yeah, great question, Brian. So I think we've all kind of been impacted by, what's going on in the world these days. And everyone is either you're working from home all the time, or maybe you're in the office and then you're back out of the office. Some of your teammates may be in the office, or, we might just be in like a fully remote situation. And the thing that's interesting, I think, in the development community is even before kind of the pandemic hit, a lot of developers kind of like that more remote feeling. I got to go away and I got to code and I need my focus time. A lot of my engineers actually liked working from home because you get less interruptions and that type of thing. And I think, what happened over the last year is all of that kind of mindset, that asynchronous mindset, I'm developing on my own terms, kind of just got accelerated.
Yeah.
And we actually at Linear B, we have some really, interesting data that we've collected from the community. We have about, 1,000 teams using Linear B today, and we can kind of see some of these different behaviors. And for example, one thing that has happened since kind of going fully remote or hybrid remote is what we're seeing is actually 92% of teams or developers are actually writing more code than they did before. Less interruptions. I can be at home, I can get my headphones on, I might be able to dive in a little bit more than having, a product owner pinging me all the time or something like that. So there is more code being written. But also on the flip side, we're seeing that 63% of teams are actually releasing less code into production, which is an interesting, kind of dichotomy there.
Yeah, it's an interesting inverse. There's lots going in, but less coming out. How do you have you figured out a way yet to sort of rationalize what that means? Is it just kind of overwhelmed, or is it just where things are different, or what are you seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of being able to write more code, I think it has to do with kind of those less interruptions, right? A lot of developers, you might be, that open floor plan was kind of a thing for a while, a sexy thing to do. And, everybody's around me, there's commotion, I'm getting asked questions on status updates. All of that is a little bit more gone now that I'm remote. And so that's where you're getting more time writing code coming from. But on the flip side, if you think about what does it take to get my code out into production, well, that's a team sport. I need to put up a pull request. I need to have that pull request reviewed. I need to get feedback on that PR. I need to merge the code. I need to actually, do a deployment. Not every team in the world has the perfect CI CD.
Right.
And kind of that teamwork part of it, and this is an area that Linear B visualizes and focuses on, that's where we're actually slowing down. So I might, be developing code for a day or two and actually put up a pull request, but now I need feedback from another developer in a remote location. I can't turn my chair around and just say, hey, could you review this? And so we're seeing a gap in time, which is leading to those larger, longer release cycles.
Yeah. One of the things that I sort of noticed as I was sort of digging into the tool and the platform and so forth was, so much of this stuff is you guys make it very visible, right? Dependencies are visible, kind of team statuses are visible, all sorts of stuff. I'm curious how you guys think about, when so much becomes visible, does that become a good thing for transparent? Is this added transparency and accountability oftentimes turn out to be a good thing? Does it take teams a long time to sort of work through, what it means to sort of always make things visible, or, like what are some of the kind of the steps that you see as people not only adopt the tool, but have to adopt, kind of or evolve the way that they look at it, measure teammates, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? I think we've kind of established that most developers actually enjoy working remote, or more even, more descriptive than remote, in an asynchronous methodology, right?
Right.
So what does that mean? I can work any time of the day. I can work, I might have child obligations. I might want to work at night. I might have a team overseas that I'm relying on. At the end of the day, if we think about what kind of asynchronous development actually is, it's an approach to building software that enables teams to deliver as much value as possible to their customers, but allowing them to work asynchronously. Now, what comes along with that, though, is you can't just do the same things necessarily that you were doing in office in order to be effective. And so what you brought up is, kind of the transparency aspects of this. One of the main things that we focus on and provide within Linear B is visibility.
Yeah.
So what does that mean, right? Well, if everyone on my development team has visibility, for example, in an automated way, how a project or a sprint is progressing, I never need to have, kind of that standard status update meeting. Hey, how is what's the progress? Did you do work yesterday? How far along are you? I mean, that's things that, kind of annoy developers too. But if you're going to work asynchronously, you have to pair that with great project visibility, release visibility, which PRs are open, who's assigned to what, should I be reviewing? So it's kind of like a prerequisite to do a good job.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. It's like you said, when the environment, first and foremost, when the environment changes, you give people a certain amount of freedom, a certain amount of autonomy. The counterbalance to that has to be, well, I need to know what's going on. I need to be able to jump in at any point in time, have visibility of what's going on, because like you said, we're not working next to each other. We're not going to lunch together. We're not doing those things. So yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And obviously, communication becomes difficult when, people are either on different part of a different country, different time zone, all those sort of things. I'm curious, when we first got started, you said, one of the things the reasons you created this was because when you had a seat at the table, you wanted to come with information so that you could speak to the business leaders and so forth. What are some of those things that you guys do or that you've learned in that, in how you speak to the business, right? Because so often, I found in software teams, the first ask is, what are you going to do? The second ask is, how long will it take? Give me a roadmap. And people don't always, realize, like, look, those are estimates, things change and so forth. But like, how have you learned to talk to the business just through experience, through the right tooling and so forth over time?
Yeah. So when you're a VP of engineering or a CTO and you're kind of sitting in that executive room, oftentimes you're kind of the only technical person there.
Right.
CEO is typically not technical. Sometimes they are, but you have sales and you have marketing. The number one question that we get is when. Right. When is the thing going to be delivered? Right, exactly. When is it going to come out? When can I tell the customers? When can we do marketing about it? And, unfortunately, that's actually not the best question. And so what we've kind of done to, flip the conversation at the executive table is provide CTOs and VPs with a set of metrics such as cycle time or the amount of rework that's happening in the organization, and also, the investment profile. So if you come to the executive table with a metric like cycle time, right? Cycle time measures how effectively are we able to get code from first commit to release. Now you can start educating the executive table, these are the KPIs that actually describe if my engineering organization is healthy, and also therefore describe if we're going to be on time for all the nice new features or bug fixes or customer requests that you all want to get released into production. And what we found is, as you're bringing more of these engineering metrics or data to the executive table, we can now have better conversations. Instead of just being asked, when is the thing going to be delivered? We could perhaps have a conversation saying, hey, you know what? I want to show you our cycle time. And actually, in our cycle time, one of the reasons that we've been late on certain projects is we have a bottleneck in our delivery process, or we have a bottleneck in our deployment. And I'm going to show you that from a data perspective. Could I invest more time into some of this non-functional work and maybe delay some of these features that you've been asking for in order to deliver more features on time? And we found that is a much more productive conversation for engineering leaders to have.
Yeah. I mean, it almost shifts it from, when is this, like you said, to, what are the causes for things, right? Like, is it, we're asking for too many features in condensed amount of time? Is it we haven't invested enough in some part of that supply chain? Maybe it's QA, maybe it's whatever. But I mean, I can imagine that the more you can sort of bring the data, put it into terms that sort of fit the way that they think about things, it opens up the conversation, and it may make them say, hey, look, I need you to not make everything, priority 1A. I need you to, reset how we do this. We need to figure out a mechanism to ship on a more frequent basis as opposed to, sort of waterfall stuff. So yeah, I can absolutely see where having the right data changes the conversation, but you can't change the conversation without the data, right? It's a chicken and egg type of thing.
And you know what the data really does? So with Linear B, we provide a dashboard that has all these metrics that you can bring to your executive table. But you know what it really does? Something I like to say is data gains trust.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, again, if you're having to convince someone of something, or you need help with something, and especially if that person is not technical, if you bring data to the conversation and say, look, this is really what's happening within the organization. Here's the suggested change that I want to make. I want to put more resources into non-functional work. But by the way, I'm going to show you this dashboard every single week to show you that our cycle time is improving every single week. That is a very trusting conversation. And what we find is kind of the people on the other side of the conversation say, you know what? I can see the data. I see that there's a problem. And you're going to show me a trend every week. I'm in. Go move your resources. Maybe it's an example to some of this non-functional work. I'm comfortable, pushing out the customer commitments because the data is providing that trust for me.
Right. Yeah. It brings credibility. It brings a common language between different groups. You can compare things and so forth. No, it makes a ton of sense. And it's always amazing, how often, unfortunately, engineering teams do come to the table and they go, oh, we just underestimated, or, something else was the problem. And you're like, but what? Like what's doing it? And having those tools. I want to kind of come back to this idea of asynchronous, because one of the things I've seen you write about was, this idea that, the last year has changed things a lot, but it hasn't really changed things so much as it's kind of, it's emphasized or heightened, the need for this sort of asynchronousness. Do you feel like maybe some of the learnings that we've gotten out of this last year, assuming the world goes back to quote unquote normal and people can move around and so forth, are kind of the building blocks of how we should build teams and tools and visibility in general, or I feel like that's kind of where you're going, because we have remote teams. We acquire a company, like you mentioned earlier on. You guys got acquired. You might not be in the same location. Did the muscles we learned in this last year become transferable to things going forward?
Yeah, I think so. I kind of get asked a lot, where is software development going? What is coming next, right? Everyone knows about the agile movement. What was the agile movement? The way that I think about it is let's have quick feedback cycles instead of waiting 6 months to find out if the customer is happy because we built out this huge design document, then started coding, then released 6 months later. Instead of doing that, let's at least get feedback every 2 weeks, right? And that was kind of the agile movement. And then what was coupled with that is the DevOps movement, which was kind of like, okay, we need technologies, we need dev and ops working together to actually enable these quick feedback cycles so we can test in an automated way, deploy in an automated way. Well, now what's coming after DevOps, what I kind of believe in is this async development. We want to keep the principles of Agile. We want to keep the principles of DevOps, but now we just want to do it at any time of the day from any location, even more so in real time. And so what we've kind of come up with at Linear B is a little bit of a asynchronous development manifesto. And I'd just like to talk, about, three of the, there's 5 bullet points in this manifesto, but I want to emphasize 3 of them.
Sure.
The first one is you have to embrace the async communication. Now, I was doing a podcast with Kate Houston. She's one of the engineering leaders at DuckDuckGo.
Okay.
And for example, there's certain types of communication that can be totally asynchronous. Again, you do not have to get a status update from a developer or a project update from a development team, or you do not have to come to a stand-up and say, what did you do yesterday? None of that has to be done synchronously. That can be all done asynchronously if you're pairing that with the visibility that we talked about earlier in the pod. Because everyone can already know the status of everything. That's what Linear B does, for you, for example. Now, of course, some of the communication can be synchronous, right? You have to talk something out or something very creative or innovative, but we're trying to make most of the communication asynchronous. That's point, kind of bullet number 1. Now, the second part of this manifesto is the concept that project management tools, they're good for planning only, but they're not good for delivering software. Once work actually starts, developers are coding. That's where kind of project management tools break down. So kind of what we've done at Linear B is we're looking into your Git system. We're looking into your project system. We are sending you alerts in Slack if certain stories are stuck, they're stuck in code review, or someone has shifted focus, or we don't have enough resources here or there. All of that can kind of happen in real time. Again, it doesn't matter where everyone is working as long as you're all alerted on kind of what's stuck on the project. And again, project management tools don't really do that for you.
Right.
And the third concept is a little bit more technical, but it's that your Git system really describes the state or the status of a story or a project. So how many branches do we have open on a particular story? Are they in the code review process? Have they been merged to master? How many of these branches have actually been released? How many people are committing code on the story? Your Git system actually describes the state much better than just, a project management system that might say, hey, this story is in progress, but that's all we know about it. So if we kind of couple those 3 things together, embracing async communication, not necessarily using your project management tool once coding has actually started, and using Git to describe the state of work, those 3 things have actually enabled teams to work asynchronously.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense, and we'll put the full manifesto if written out. We'll get that in the show notes so folks can go back and dig into it. I want to ask one last question before we wrap up. One of the things I noticed was you guys sort of highlight this ability to kind of identify developer burnout or characteristics that might be. I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about how you think about identifying that, because obviously there's a personal aspect of that. There's managers trying to manage their teams well and so forth. Like, how do you guys think about identifying it within the tool, and then what are some things that it does to help both the individual and maybe the team kind of better manage through it, so you don't have spikes and people having to step away from stuff and all the challenges that go with burnout?
Yeah, absolutely. So, going back to how most of us are either working remotely or in kind of a hybrid remote situation. And I mentioned earlier that we've seen coding time starting to increase. One of the things that's kind of been happening is when you work from home, it's also easy, I guess, to get lost in your work.
Yep. You
could actually be working, 24 hours a day, or I'm working on the weekend. My office is my home is my office. So we've been seeing the amount of time developers working actually increasing, which is not a good thing for productivity, right? You don't want to be working every day of the week if you want effective productivity in the long run. So there's a few things that we show within the Linear B tool to actually kind of point out burnout or indicators of burnout. One of them is work in progress. So for every developer, we'll actually show this is how many branches this developer is working on right now. And normally you never want to be working on more than 3 to 5 branches in parallel. If it gets over 5, that's just way too much whip on one person, and that will lead to burnout.
Yep.
So kind of that whip management is one thing. The other things that we kind of show is what I like to call either like focus management or kind of like focus factor. So we have this really interesting view in Linear B that will show within a team if people are swapping around to different tasks. So it's like I was working on a story for my iteration, but all of a sudden, twice within the iteration, I got pulled off for a production fire. I got pulled off for a customer bug. I'm switching back and forth between a feature request for the customer and maybe like my main story for an iteration. That causes burnout, being defocused. And we'll emphasize that and highlight it. Other than that, we will show if, the developers or people within a team are committing code every day of the week, not taking breaks on the weekend. And if you kind of put those 3 things together, you get really good burnout indicators out of Linear B.
Yeah, no, makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Listen, Dan, I want to thank you for the time today. Really, gives us some good perspective into not only, how to make development teams successful, but just as importantly, like how do we make sure that development teams are able to have a seat at the table with the business leaders, communicate with them, have the right tools, have the right data. If folks are interested in kind of, picking your brain about this some more, kind of learning more about what you guys do at Linear B, what's the best ways to get in touch? What's the best ways to engage?
Yeah, if you're interested in learning more about this type of stuff, there's 2 places to go to. One, you can check out the Dev Interrupted podcast. That's actually a pod that I host.
Oh, nice.
And we talk specifically about all of these topics, from burnout to visibility to cycle time, on a weekly basis. And the other place that you can go, of course, is go to linearb.io. Our product is free forever for single dev teams, and you can sign up for free there.
Nice. Very, very cool. Well, listen, Dan, as I mentioned before, thank you so much for the time today. Folks, we're going to wrap it up with that. As always, thank you for listening. Thanks for telling a friend. Thanks for sharing the show and helping us spread the community. And if you get a chance, go out, give us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Google Play or anywhere else you listen to your podcast. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up for myself and Aaron. We want to thank Dan for the time today, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.